I thought I was moving into my dream mansion, until a stranger claimed it was hers, and the police showed up within minutes. This instantly draws viewers in with suspense, conflict, and curiosity. ****. I had imagined the first night in my new mansion countless times. The feeling of stepping into a space that was entirely mine, where every corner reflected a dream I had worked years to achieve. The sprawling estate rose before me like a monument to history and luxury, its architecture telling stories of generations past, of wealth and legacy, of lives that had intersected with the very stones and walls I was about to call home. I parked my car in the driveway, the crunch of gravel under my tires breaking the stillness of the evening, and grabbed the small box of personal items I had brought along for the first night. A few essentials, a change of clothes, my laptop, and some sentimental trinkets that made any place feel like home. The air was crisp, carrying the faint scent of pine from the surrounding trees, and as I stepped out of the car, I allowed myself a moment to breathe in the quiet triumph of having finally arrived. This was it, my new beginning, my home. I let out a small, almost involuntary smile as I looked up at the mansion. It was bigger, more imposing, and more beautiful than I had imagined from the photos and documents. And yet there was something welcoming about it, something that promised safety, comfort, and opportunity. I started walking up the grand stone steps leading to the massive oak doors at the front entrance. My hand fumbled slightly as I searched my pockets for the antique brass key, the key that symbolized ownership. That meant I had earned the right to be here. But just as I was about to insert the key into the lock, something flickered in my peripheral vision, a dim light, a pale glow emanating from one of the downstairs windows. That was odd. The power wasn't supposed to be active until tomorrow morning. Maybe the previous owners had left something behind, a forgotten lamp, a security light, something trivial. I shook my head, dismissing the thought, and focused on the key in my hand. With a deep breath, I slid the key into the lock, turned it, and pushed the heavy door open. The hinges creaked under the weight of the door, and the sound echoed through the cavernous foyer, bouncing off marble floors and ornate moldings. I called out a tentative, "Hello." My voice seemed swallowed by the soaring ceilings and endless space. "Anyone here?" The echo answered me, a hollow repetition that only heightened the uneasy sense of solitude. Then, from the top of the grand staircase, a figure appeared. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me, but as she stepped fully into view, I realized she was real. A woman, likely in her late 50s, her posture straight and commanding. Her clothing immaculate twin, set in pale cream, hair blonde and perfectly She surveyed me from the top of the stairs, and in her gaze, I could read a mixture of disbelief, indignation, and something far sharper, authority. "And just who are you?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the quiet like a knife. "How did you get in here?" I froze for a second, taken aback. No one had warned me about any residents, about anyone still being in the house. I'm Garrett," I said carefully, my voice steady though my mind raced. "The new owner." Her reaction was immediate and sharp, a short, incredulous laugh that seemed to bounce off the walls. "The new owner," she said, her tone dripping with disbelief and scorn. "Don't be ridiculous. This is my son's house. I am Constance, and you, sir, are trespassing." I blinked. My brain scrambled to reconcile what I was hearing with what I knew to be true. "Your son's house," I echoed, trying to keep my voice calm, my confusion barely contained. "I closed on this property yesterday. I have all the paperwork." I raised the key in my hand, holding it like a small talisman, proof that I had earned the right to stand here. Constance's eyes narrowed, and a predatory smile touched her lips. She began descending the staircase slowly, each step deliberate, the kind of movement that seemed practiced to assert dominance. "Paperwork can be forged," she said, her voice low but sharp. "I am the president of the homeowners association in this community, and I know for a fact that this property belongs to my family. I suggest you leave before I call the police." Her words hit me like a slap. The absurdity of the situation setting my mind spinning. A joke. This had to be a joke. My pulse quickened, but I refused to let panic take over. I steadied my voice. "Ma'am, there's been a huge misunderstanding. This is my house. I paid for it. The deed is in my name." She let out a sharp laugh that cut across the foyer. "We'll see about that," she said, pulling a phone from her pocket with a flourish. She spoke into it with all the confidence of someone who believed the law was entirely on her side. "Yes, police. There's a man in my home. He claims to own it. I feel threatened." "Yes, 14, Willow Creek Lane. Please hurry." Within minutes, flashing blue and red lights illuminated the grand foyer, painting the marble floors and ornate walls with urgent color. Two uniformed officers entered, their expressions serious. Scanning the scene, Constance rushed toward them, an impeccable performance of a distressed homeowner. "Oh, thank goodness you're here," she cried. "This man broke in. He's trying to steal my son's house." One of the officers, tall and calm, turned to me. "Sir, can you explain what's happening?" I took a deep breath, the surrealness of it all threatening to overwhelm me. "Officer, my name is Garrett. I purchased this house yesterday. The sale was finalized, and I have proof." This woman is claiming it's hers, but I am the legal owner. Constance interjected quickly. He's lying. My son, bless his heart, is traveling abroad. He left me in charge. I've been living here for weeks. Everything belongs to us. The officer, maintaining a composed demeanor, addressed Constance. Ma'am, do you have proof of ownership, deed, bills, any documentation in your son's name? Her expression faltered. For the first time, the certainty in her voice wavered. Well, everything is in a safe, she said finally, and my son has the combination, but I live here. My things are upstairs. She paused, realizing the weight of her words might not be enough. The officer then turned back to me. And you, sir, do you have proof of purchase? Yes, I said, pulling out my phone. I scrolled through the digital documents, closing statements, wire transfer confirmations, emails from the title company. Every document showed my name clearly as the buyer. The officer examined the screen. His brow furrowed slightly as he checked the authenticity. After a long pause, he nodded toward me. This appears legitimate, he said. Then to Constance, ma'am, this seems like a civil matter, not a criminal one. We cannot remove him from the property without a court order. Constance's face turned a shade of purple with rage. Lawyers are unacceptable. She shrieked. This is my home. The officers gave each other a look and left, leaving me alone with Constance once more. The mansion was vast, the echo of her fury reverberating through the marble halls. Her eyes, sharp and glinting, followed me as I tried to take in the space that was now mine. This isn't over, she hissed, storming back up the staircase, leaving a trail of tension in her wake. For the first time, I felt the reality of what owning this mansion would entail. It wasn't just the property, the grandeur, or the history, it was the confrontation. The unexpected challenge of asserting my rights in a space someone else wanted to claim. The house was mine, legally, undeniably, and yet, in that moment, standing alone in the echoing foyer after the police had gone, it didn't feel like home. Not yet. The confrontation with Constance was only the beginning. A test of patience, determination, and the lengths I would have to go to protect what was rightfully mine. The days following the confrontation with Constance were nothing short of a nightmare. What should have been the excitement of moving into my dream mansion had morphed into a maze of legal threats, anxious calls, and sleepless nights. From the moment I stepped out of the courtroom after the police left, I knew that this would not be a simple matter of proving ownership. Constance was relentless, and her belief that she could intimidate me into leaving was chillingly clear. I had entered a war I hadn't anticipated, one that would test my patience, my nerve, and my understanding of the law. The mansion, once a symbol of freedom and achievement, now felt like a fortress I had to defend. Every creak of the floorboards, every shadow cast by the ornate chandelier, seemed to echo with the memory of Constance's accusing glare and the sharpness of her voice as she claimed. This house was hers. It began with a flurry of paperwork. Within hours of our initial confrontation, my lawyer, Ben, contacted me with urgent news. Constance had filed an emergency injunction to have me removed from the property. Her lawyers insisted that I had acquired the mansion through fraudulent means, painting me as an opportunist attempting to seize what belonged to someone else. The language of the injunction was severe, declaring that any continued occupation of the mansion by me would constitute contempt of court. I remember sitting at my kitchen table in my temporary apartment, staring at the digital documents Ben had sent me, trying to process the implications. Every paragraph seemed designed to make my stomach churn. I had paid for the mansion, completed the sale legally, and yet here I was, facing accusations that threatened not just my ownership, but the very stability of my life. Ben, a seasoned attorney with a reputation for navigating complex property disputes, tried to calm me. Garrett, breathe. This is serious, yes, but we have strong proof. The sale was legitimate, the title clean, and the closing firm reputable. We are in a strong position. I nodded, but my mind raced with questions. How could someone challenge a purchase so thoroughly? How could a will, a document that on the surface seemed innocuous, suddenly complicate everything? My sense of triumph from the day I closed on the property felt distant now, replaced by a gnawing anxiety that I couldn't shake. The hearing was scheduled for the following week, and in the meantime, Constance had escalated her campaign. She circulated notices to the Homeowners Association, claiming I was an interloper, a fraud, and a threat to the community. Neighbors I had hoped to meet with smiles and handshakes now regarded me with suspicion, whispers following me as I walked past their homes. Every visit to the mansion required careful planning, every movement watched, every interaction fraught with tension. It was as though my own triumph had turned into a cage, and the more I asserted my rights, the more Constance pushed back. She seemed to thrive on the chaos she was creating, each act of intimidation more elaborate than the last. Finally, the day of the emergency court hearing arrived. I woke before dawn, unable to sleep despite Ben's reassurances. The mansion, just hours away, sat in the backdrop of my mind like a promise and a threat intertwined. Driving to the courthouse, I could feel my palms sweating, gripping the steering wheel tightly. The building loomed large, the stone facade almost as imposing as the mansion itself. A reminder that this battle was not in marble foyers or on winding staircases, it was here, in the courtroom, under the scrutiny of a judge and in the presence of seasoned legal professionals. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Constance sat across from me, flanked by a team of lawyers who looked every bit as confident and predatory as she did. Her posture was perfect, her gaze sharp, and she smiled in a way that was meant to unnerve. I sat with Ben beside me, reviewing the documents one last time, my phone displaying every piece of proof. I had wire transfers, closing statements, emails from the title company, and digital confirmations of the sale. Despite the mounting tension, I felt a small spark of reassurance knowing that the truth was on my side. The hearing began, and Constance's attorney was the first to speak. He laid out a compelling narrative. Her son was abroad, she had been left in charge, and she had every right to maintain residence in the mansion. He presented a will, purportedly from the previous owner, a distant cousin, naming her son as the sole heir. The document appeared formal, complete with signatures and notarization, and for a fleeting moment, my confidence wavered. Could the will invalidate my purchase? Could this seemingly small piece of paper undo months of planning, savings, and legal procedure? The room seemed to close in around me, the walls lined with wood panels and spectators whose whispers added weight to the tension. Ben rose smoothly, calm and composed, his voice resonating with authority. Your Honor, if I may, the sale of this property was conducted legally, with full disclosure and verification by a reputable title company. The purchase was finalized, funds transferred, and all documentation properly executed. Mr. Garrett is the rightful owner. He paused for effect, allowing the words to settle. Constance's lawyer scoffed, pushing back with pointed arguments and a carefully rehearsed narrative of loss, family rights, and tradition. He described the emotional weight of the property, painting my acquisition as opportunistic, almost predatory. The judge leaned forward, eyes scanning the documents and listening intently to the back-and-forth arguments. I could feel the tension rising with every passing minute. It was as though the very fate of my dream home hung in the balance. Each word spoken a potential pivot toward victory or disaster. I gripped the edge of the table, trying to calm my racing thoughts, reminding myself that Ben was capable, experienced, and prepared. Hours seemed to pass in what felt like minutes. Constance's lawyer continued, presenting evidence, witnesses, and arguments that challenged the legitimacy of my claim. The will was particularly dangerous. It appeared authentic, and the language was convincing, invoking familial rights and a sense of moral obligation. I could see the judge's brow furrow slightly as he considered the implications, and my stomach tightened. I had come so far, only to feel my dream slipping through my fingers because of a document that on the surface seemed indisputable. Then Ben had a revelation. Rising with quiet confidence, he addressed the court. Your Honor, before my client purchased this property, a detailed historical survey was commissioned. It traces the property back to its original founding, documenting every legal transfer, every covenant, and every restriction placed upon the land since its inception. The courtroom went still. Even Constance's team paused, sensing the shift. He opened a thick leather-bound book, sliding it across the table. This mansion was built on land granted by the state in the 1800s. The original grant included a covenant. The property cannot be inherited through a will or passed down through familial succession. It may only ever be transferred via direct sale. This is an unbreakable legal precedent, established at the foundation of this estate. The weight of his words seemed to press down on the room. Gasps and murmurs swept through the spectators. Constance's confident expression faltered, and a flicker of panic crossed her face. Ben continued, explaining every detail with precision, drawing attention to the documents that proved the sale was the only legitimate transfer. The will presented by the plaintiff is therefore irrelevant. The estate could not pass to her son, and no argument of familial succession has any legal standing. My client's purchase is valid and binding. The law is clear, and the historical record supports it beyond dispute. The courtroom fell silent. Constance's lawyers scrambled through their papers, searching desperately for a counter-argument, but the foundation of their case had crumbled. The judge leaned back, eyes wide, examining the legal text Ben had provided. It was clear the historical covenants overruled the will and validated my purchase. The tension in the room was palpable, the air thick with disbelief and triumph. Finally, the judge slammed the gavel. In light of this extraordinary evidence, the plaintiff's claim is without merit. The emergency injunction is denied. The property legally belongs to Mr. Garrett. Relief surged through me like a tidal wave. Months of anxiety, confrontation, and uncertainty were finally over. The mansion, my dream, was mine. Every legal hurdle, every tense negotiation, every sleepless night had led to this moment of vindication. As we left the courthouse, I glanced at Constance. She was small, defeated, and humiliated. Her carefully constructed persona shattered. The legal nightmare was over, but its lessons remained etched in my mind. Victory required patience, preparation, and the courage to stand firm in the face of intimidation. The mansion, once a symbol of stress and conflict, now awaited me as a home in the truest sense, ready to be filled with my own memories and future. The courtroom was tense, the air thick with anticipation, as I sat with Ben, my lawyer, reviewing our notes one last time. Constance was across the aisle, a picture of composure that barely masked the rising panic in her eyes. Her team of lawyers had spent the morning presenting evidence, witnesses, and arguments designed to paint me as an opportunist man preying on a grieving family. They had called the will into question, highlighting every conceivable flaw in my purchase, every tiny technicality that could shift the judge's favor. For hours, I had felt the weight of every word, every objection, every legal maneuver. It was exhausting, mentally draining, and yet I knew that everything rested on one thing: evidence. Solid, undeniable proof that I was the rightful owner. Ben rose calmly, his presence commanding the room, his voice steady but resonant. "Your Honor, if I may," he began, and the room fell silent, even the murmurs from the spectators fading. "Before Mr. Garrett purchased this property, he commissioned a comprehensive historical survey. This survey traced the estate back to its original founding in the 1800s, detailing every transfer of ownership, every legal covenant, and every restriction associated with this land." He opened a thick, leather-bound volume, sliding it across the table toward the judge. The pages seemed to breathe history-yellowed parchment, careful handwriting, legal stamps, and annotations spanning generations. "This mansion," Ben continued, his tone precise and deliberate, "was built on land granted by the state. The original grant contained a covenantan ironclad legal restriction which states that the property may never be inherited through a will or passed down through familial succession. Upon the death of the owner, if no direct sale is underway, the property must revert to the state and be sold at public auction. It may only ever be transferred through a direct sale." The courtroom went still. Spectators leaned forward, whispers hushed by the gravity of the revelation. Even Constance's lawyers paused, the shock evident on their faces. Constance herself seemed frozen, her lips slightly parted, her eyes wide. For the first time, I saw doubt flicker across her carefully maintained facade. The will she had relied upon for her claim was irrelevant. The law, written over a century ago, had already decided the outcome if it came to a legal dispute. Ben placed his finger on a marked page in the document, his voice calm but firm. "Your Honor, every sale conducted since the mansion's founding has adhered strictly to this covenant. The property may not be transferred through familial ties or inherited via a will. This is not a technicality or a loophole, it is a binding legal restriction, one that overrides any claims of inheritance." He paused, allowing the weight of the words to settle. Mr. Garrett's purchase was a direct sale, fully verified, and completely legal. The claim presented by Constance is therefore without merit. The tension in the room was palpable. Constance's lawyers flipped through their papers frantically, their confident arguments collapsing under the weight of Ben's evidence. They tried to counter with technicalities, pointing out dates, signatures, and procedural details, but every objection was met with a factual rebuttal that left them scrambling. It became increasingly clear that the historical survey was irrefutable. The property's legal lineage, meticulously documented, left no room for challenge. The will, the supposed heirship, all of it was nullified by the original covenant. I felt a strange mix of relief and disbelief. After weeks of confrontation, threats, and sleepless nights, the tide was finally turning. The fear that I had been duped, that my dream of owning this mansion would dissolve into legal chaos, began to lift. Every piece of evidence I had collected, every precaution I had taken before the purchase, every late-night call with Bennett had all led to this moment. The judge leaned back, his eyes scanning the pages of the historical survey and the other documents Ben had presented. He adjusted his glasses, a crease forming in his forehead as he absorbed the information. "This covenant," he said, his voice carrying the weight of authority, "clearly states that the property may not be inherited through a will. All evidence indicates that the only valid transfer of this estate is through a direct sale." He paused, looking directly at Constance. "In light of this evidence, the plaintiff's claim is without merit. The emergency injunction is denied, and the property legally belongs to Mr. Garrett." A rush of relief surged through me, almost overwhelming. Months of anxiety, confrontation, and uncertainty were finally over. The mansion, my dream, was mine. Every legal obstacle, every tense argument, every moment of doubt had led to this vindication. I exhaled, feeling the tension drain from my shoulders, replaced by a profound sense of triumph and justice. Constance slumped slightly in her chair, the mask of composure she had maintained for so long now broken. Her eyes, once sharp and calculating, now looked defeated and small. I could see the realization settling in. The mansion she had claimed, the power she had tried to wield, had slipped through her fingers. Her carefully orchestrated campaign to intimidate me, to use legal maneuvers to claim a house that was not hers, had failed spectacularly. As we left the courtroom, the sun streaming through the tall windows, I couldn't help but notice the contrast between the building we had just exited and the mansion that awaited me. One represented the law, argument, and confrontation. The other represented my dream, hard work, and perseverance. Driving back, I didn't head to a hotel. I didn't need to. The mansion was waiting, and I was going home. The roads seemed brighter, the air lighter, and the world somehow more certain. Pulling into the driveway, the mansion rose before me once more. Magnificent and imposing, yet now it felt different. No longer was it a place of tension, threat, or uncertainty. It was a sanctuary. I walked up the stone steps, each one a reminder of the battle I had fought and won. The key fit smoothly into the lock, and as I pushed the massive oak doors open, the familiar creak seemed to welcome me home rather than warn me of danger. Inside, everything was exactly as I had imagined: marble floors gleaming, chandeliers casting delicate patterns across the walls, the echo of history in every room. And for the first time, the mansion felt like it truly belonged to me. Every piece of evidence, every moment of tension, every courtroom drama had led to this. A victory not just over Constance, but over doubt, fear, and uncertainty. I had fought for my dream, and I had won. That night, as I walked through the empty halls, I reflected on the journey. The mansion was more than a house. It was a testament to persistence, to careful preparation, and to standing firm in the face of intimidation. The legal nightmare, the confrontation, the threats, they had tested me in ways I never imagined. But they had also proven something essential. The truth, backed by evidence and patience, could withstand even the most formidable opposition. As I settled into my first night in the mansion, I felt a profound sense of peace. I had faced every challenge head-on, and I had come out victorious. The home was finally mine, not just in paper, but in spirit. Every room, every hallway, every ornate detail now belonged to me. And as I lay in the quiet, the mansion finally silent, I knew that this was more than a victory. It was a new beginning, one built on perseverance, courage, and the unwavering commitment to stand up for what is rightfully yours.